thousands of years I have lain dormant. Who had to start my...
What's up, guys? Alright, so today we have kind of a special little event going on. One, this is the first time that I've actually had my new microphone in it, and I'm actually streaming with it for the first time, stuff like that. Hey, how's everybody doing? The second thing is, this is the first time I've had a creator checking out something with me. Today we have Vox in the Void. Say hey, Vox.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Vox in the Void.
Good to be here.
Vox in the Void, he does audio dramas. He does a lot of voice work, a lot of which you guys have enjoyed, a lot of which you guys have requested, and a lot of which I will eventually get to once again before the heat death of the universe. Yeah, new mic. The budget has increased. It is not refurbished. I am sorry, Tyler. I did not get a refurbished mic for you, okay? I know I sound like a different person. I sound like an actual human being, I think. So, who's all in the chat right now? We have Andre, we have the Burb, we have the Hive Mind. Just don't tell me Prophet's in here. I have guests. I don't need Prophet here right now. So this is going to be all the gods are dead. And I think the first question that I really wanted to know was, what inspired this story, Vox?
I think what it was is my mic sounding okay, by the way? Someone said there's static in the mic.
There is static in the mic, but it's not that bad. It's really not that bad.
Okay. I'm sorry about that, guys. So I think the main inspiration for it was the fact that I grew up with the grim dark of Warhammer. And that's what got me into it when I was quite young. And I feel like, not that it's lost, but I felt like I could bring something a bit more grim to my channel as such. I get a lot of stories about heroic redemption arcs. And I think that it was really my priority was to bring back something a bit more grim, a bit more hopeless. I think a lot of people wanted to hear that from the channel, from all the information that I gathered from people.
Yeah, one of the things that I like when I read a story, one of my favorite ones that you did, one of the absolute favorite ones, was about the Tyranids attacking a ship. There was nothing outside the ship. There was no, outside context. It was a little bit of snippets. It was a lot of audio cues. It was a lot of suspense building. I think you did it perfectly, because it's one of those stories that, and you guys know the one I'm talking about. My brain does not work on normal levels. You guys know this. It's refurbished. It happens. But the level of the suspense that got built up when I thought it was perfect. No, it is not Doki Doki Literature Club Stream Time, biggest.
Flesh loose.
Now, this is going to be an Ask Me Anything kind of deal. And so one of the first questions that popped up that I wanted to take a look at was actually asked by Wolfboy Gaming. And he asked, and this is a good question for both of us, Fox, of all the moments in material you have read, or just remember off the top of your head, which one of them would you have wanted to witness firsthand? And that could be like epic battles, triumphant moments. And for me, Vox, I always was sitting there going, if I could see one moment in 40k lore, it would 100% be the Triumphant Ulanor. I would have loved to see that, because we get so little lore about it, but everyone seems to just gush over it in every bit of the lore. Like, at any point, it's considered the biggest military thing that happened. I will, Andre. And what about you, Vox?
I think one of the main stories that got me into listening to the audiobooks of Warhammer, the Warhammer universe, was Hell's Reach. And I would say one of the most inspiring speeches is one that I had to do for the channel myself, but was from Hell's Reach, from Grimaldus, the speech to the Guard. And I think I'd love to have been there.
Yeah, when I
to have heard that.
Yeah, when I tell people about, I tell people to one, the audiobook by Aaron Dembski Bell. Hell's Reach was the first novel in
Yeah.
40K I ever read. It was the first
Yeah,
one.
it's amazing.
Yeah, you hear me in your left ear, but not right, and you hear Vox in both. Okay, so that's probably a problem with my own microphone. I have to get adjusted. You guys know I'm a boomer. I'm boomering it up. Let's see. What is going on with my microphone? 1 second. Let me check. I thought this was fine. Oh, okay. Huh. Why is it doing that? Let's see. Do I have mono enabled? No, I have 2-track. I'm an idiot.
Is it okay? Is it okay if I answer a question?
Yeah, sure. Go right ahead.
There's a question in chat. Is that right? Well, it's not really a question. It was a statement there.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Not a panther. Right? You redid it after we suggested it. Yeah. So I recorded the speech. I thought it was cool. I uploaded it, and then I had quite a few comments, which is like a first for me. And I think it's a learning curve for any creator. If you record something you think is cool, but then you get the audience feedback immediately saying, okay, that it was good, but it wasn't powerful enough. And I thought, should I leave it up? Should I take it down and re-record it? And I made the decision, okay, I'm going to take it down. It was the first video I've ever taken down. So I took it down, and then I just re-recorded it in like an hour, and I just put as much gusto as I could into it. And I think it came out pretty well.
I think the first, I actually had something similar happen. I recorded one of my earlier 5-minute lures was on Tuska Demon Killer, and I literally did this whole orc voice, tore the entirety of my throat out, but it wasn't what people wanted to hear. It wasn't what people wanted to hear. So I got back in the lab and redid it. It's just, you know, you got. Have I tried burning incense? No, Daddy Vio, I haven't. But thank you, Hobbit. Hobbit says, new mic, who dis?
Yeah, I'm sorry if people are hearing static on my mic. I have no idea why. If it makes it better, I could probably, I don't know, go on my phone or something.
Well, I don't know why my mic is only coming in on one channel. I'm going to have to give it a listen later, but we're going to just go ahead and go from here. The static will be fine for right now. Chester says Vox is best at monologues. Angron and Cry Havoc. I am wanting to watch Cry Havoc later. That is one of the ones I want to put in. So I'm going to have fun with that one. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is going to be All the Gods Are Dead, Act 1. We're going to be trying to check out all 3 today. But all the gids. What am I, an orc? What's wrong with me?
Kids.
Are you only hearing me in one ear, Vox?
No, I can hear you in both.
Okay. Biggest, the pugs are sleeping and you do not want to rouse them. They have gone cornite. In any case, All the Gods Are Dead, Act 1. Here we go, guys.
From within the hidden, suffocating crawl space of his home, Solomon wept as he listened to the gurgling, wet noises of his wife's labored breaths above. The Raider warband gathered around her ravaged body like excited schoolchildren, enthralled by a teacher's storybook. As a final prayer to the god Emperor fell from her lips, Solomon cowered spasmodically as raucous, pleasure-filled laughter burst from the group above. Floorboards moaned from the collective weight of the unseen invaders, followed by the brutal sounds of hatchets violently hacking through flesh and into the rotting wooden flooring. The evisceration of his beautiful Adamina went on for hours. A carousel of reveling groups came and left, each bringing new...
I apologize for boomering it. Stop. Stop it.
...tools of death and terror to the ham, each one more eager to be part of something special. Solomon lay on the damp, blackened dirt within the tiny crawl space, his body squirming as he watched with revulsion through a freshly gouged hole in the wood. He couldn't see much of anything, shadowed forms at best, but what he could hear made bile rise in his throat. The sound of bone being removed from opened flesh.
Oh no!
The crack of barbed whips, shadowed by ecstatic whines. The wet slap as something was peeled free and tossed to the ground. During a rare lull in the celebrations, Solomon had to bear witness as his braying work mule Bastien was led into the habitation and became a welcomed addition to the debauched festivities. In amongst the disembodied low Gothic filth that filled the hab, spoke unspeakable and nightmarish tongues. A guttural language that simultaneously personified fear and desire. The words rasped and intertwined with the orgy of blood and pleasure, urging the desecration to continue.
Yep, we're definitely Sineshi on this. We're definitely Sineshi on this, guys.
Soon all other sounds were drowned under the lilting words of those creatures that ensured pleasure remained a constant. A rising crescendo of madness that reached into Solomon's consciousness and flayed his humanity.
Oh boy.
The language took his mortal sight and replaced it with a glimpse of a world beyond the material plane of man. More of the blackened words began to take life in Solomon's mind, as hues of pink smoke and flame swirled and licked within his imagination.
Yeah, this is good.
Upon a towering temple of oscillating flesh and marbled stone stood the naked form of his beloved Adamina, her slender fingers beckoning for his touch, as a harem of sexless, smiling terrors of the warp adorned the high steps, dancing and writhing at her sides. It was hard for Solomon to tell if some of the consummating entities were separate or conjoined in nature, long appendages appearing to fold and bind into one another. Suspended from chains on impossibly vast, jewel-encrusted platforms, great corpulent figures draped in rose-tinted silks lay feasting on platters of roasted grocs. Some resembled gigantic babies or affected children as they babbled and rolled on their backs, defecating into bone pots as they squealed for more sustenance. Others had surgically inserted feeding pipes sprouting from their guts, their obedient slaves working in tandem to lift heavy containers and pour a thick paste directly into their distended bellies. Palsied serfs diligently attended to their obese lords, forever filling wine glasses for the gluttons to wash down eternal mouthfuls of steaming meats.
Alright, Vox, you need therapy, bro. You need therapy. Jesus Christ.
Succulent vine fruits and chirping small beasts. Their frantic eating was causing the platforms to list and sway, the great chains threatening to snap under the weight of the revelry. The atrophied servants, losing what balance their skeletal legs had, spilled their wine vessels to the riotous amusement and fat-handed applause of their grotesque masters. Solomon was transfixed, a cold paralysis claiming his aged limbs, holding him prisoner to witness what was to come. From behind Adamina, bronzed fire pits vented flames skyward, illuminating the nightmare beyond. Upon a polished onyx and silver throne sat a monstrous creation of chaos. Its lithe body undulated with each long breath as it sat there, watching. Its eyelids had been removed, sockets punctured by gilded hooks that pulled the surrounding skin taut to remain in a permanent state of literal wide-eyed wonderment. As the Chaos Monster regarded Solomon's unexpected arrival at the steps of its temple, it raised its gnarled hands, rhythmically fingering the air like a puppeteer may command a marionette. Solomon felt drawn towards the dais, an invisible childlike grip taking his hand and leading him upwards, closer to his cherished Adamina and the monster that now stood behind her with the height of 3 men. An immense, shark-toothed grin formed as the demon slowly tilted its gargantuan head, reminding Solomon of how a doting father might gaze longingly at his child during their first, awkward steps. All terror dissipated as he reached the dais and stared into the oceanic blue eyes of his wife. the kindness of her soul ever calming even in this dark illusion. She remained motionless as he approached, her mouth a pursed smile, goose flesh covering her exposed body. He knew she was truly dead. He knew her corpse lay hollowed and violated in inescapable reality. He knew this wasn't his Adamina, yet still he desired to hold her close, to feel her chest rise and fall as her heart quickened, to lay with her one final time before this vision of madness would surely dissolve back into the awful truth that he was utterly alone, trapped inside a cruel space and waiting to be discovered and torn asunder. Solomon's fear returned.
We are at okay, guys, we're at about 3.5 tons in a 5-pound bag of nope at this point. This is flat out no, okay? All of this is a nope, okay?
Oh, give it a chance.
No! This is 150 tons of nope on a trailer only designed for 150 pounds. Let's keep going.
The demon now crouched, its legs bent backward at the knees,
No!
as its long neck stretched around the lovers like a snake might encircle their prey. Overlapping rows of shark teeth, obsidian black in the light of the fire pits, chattered and pulsed, retracting and extending through fleshy gums. Solomon noted with horror the worm-like tongue that darted around its maw with a self-preservation and life completely separate to its host, desperately avoiding the razored teeth and being bitten in two. The grinning creature filled its lungs before slowly exhaling a rumbling, inhuman breath, a twisted signal horn, organic and monstrous that seemed to reverberate off the hidden boundaries of the dream. Solomon fixed his eyes on the rictus, unblinking form of Adamina.
Hobbit, thank you, Hobbit. He asks, Vox, who hurt you? Jesus Christ. Where are the Apex says, where are the Graham Knights when you meet them? Of course, biggest ask old man wanna smash.
Old man wanna smash.
This is my community. This is what happens. This is what happens when the war pugs are exposed to normal people. Why do you do this while I eat? Biggin says stop narrating your bad experience with your wife.
Where's that?
Good God, this is excellent, dude. This is great.
Oh, thank you.
Here we go. The 150 bags of nope have exceeded the limits of the 50 bags of fuck that. If the hive mind says I have to send some of my bioforms to therapy.
Tenderly, he ran his hands through her graying hair, contrails of coalescing colors echoing each fingertip as time itself slowed and the firelight dimmed around them. He could feel this dark facade was approaching its finale, and yearned for his beloved to reciprocate his affections. She finally responded to Solomon's touch.
Thank you, Michael.
She pushed into
yeah,
his
this is
caress
one of the
and he
best
felt her
Laneshi
hands
stories
questing
ever.
South. And as she retrieved a glistening serrated blade from between her sex and carved her breasts from her slender frame, she pressed her lips against his.
What the fuck?
Laughed. A sudden gust of warm air left an acrid, infused perfume in its wake, and the hellscape of flesh and indulgence vanished, leaving only a flickering candlelit visage of Adamina's blood-soaked hand, inviting Solomon to her eternal embrace. Back inside the confined, airless crawl space, Solomon raised an arm in response to the vision, pushing against the ceiling with splayed fingers. He clenched his outstretched hand into a balled fist, feeling his fingernails dig into the flesh of his palm, before sinking into the dark of unconsciousness.
X in chat to nuke wherever this is happening from orbit until the planet crust cracks. Do it. up innocent, recognizing the bodies in the water. Jesus!
He awoke to the rhythmic patter of dripping liquids. Viscous bodily fluids that had been pooling and soaking through the floorboards for hours were now beginning to ooze through the gaps in the hardwood, spattering into the dirt and across his prone body. There were no other noises within the habitation as another globule of mixed excretion dewed on the wood above his eyes. No accursed dialects, no grunts or howls of ecstasy, no tools of torture, scraping or cutting, no screams or cries for mercy. Nothing. Solomon turned onto his belly, pulled himself onto his elbows, and slowly inched towards the small false floor in the center of the confined space. Raw-boned rats, disturbed by his movements, now raced across the sodden earth, the braver and more hungry ones returning to opportunely nip at his skin as he passed. Sucking in a wheezing breath, Solomon gradually pushed the concealed panel upwards and peered over the lip of the square hole. The habitation was dark and empty of life, yet a permeating sweet stench remained, as if a slaughterhouse had been bathed in lavender oils. Solomon grimaced as he struggled to pull himself through the open hatch, his aged arms weak from months of starvation, barely managing to haul his weight from the hole. Only when Solomon got to his knees, quietly replaced the floor panel, and had an uncensored look at what used to be his family home, is when the madness truly began. On the west wall, the headless carcass of their pack mule stood upon two legs in a parody of human gait, pinned in place with long spears through its legs and barrel. A crudely daubed face was smeared on the rockcrete above the severed neck of the beast in thick red paint. The childlike artwork bore a resemblance to the grinning demon Solomon had seen within the vision. A figure, half-dressed in the garish uniform of the renegade warband, was dead, mutilated atop a great wooden breaking wheel. Each limb was bound and broken to the archaic device of pain, yet his scarified face remained contorted and frozen in the throes of climax. He enjoyed it, thought Solomon, as he edged his way around the wheel, trying to keep upright through the wet mess at his boots. He looked to the fireplace, where his wife had been butchered and used for entertainment since the early hours of dawn.
Oh my
but
God.
there lay no remains. Not even a spot of dried blood touched that area of the habitation. Just stacks of melting tallow candles and emptied leather wineskins. Solomon almost allowed himself some relief that he wouldn't have to stare upon his dead wife's face and atone for his cowardice. Where had they taken her? Oh, holy God, Emperor, he didn't want to imagine.
Oh, God, I don't want to think about this.
No time to grieve. If he wanted to keep his soul, he must move, find provisions, and move. The cupboards were bare, yet this was nothing unusual during the enemy occupation that racked the agricultural world of Arvum. All stockpiled food rations and harvests had been reserved for the local guard forces in their war of attrition with the marauding Traitor Guard Legion, known across the Vox castes as the Scourge of Adavan. Civilian refusal to contribute a weekly quota of personal food stocks resulted in an immediate sentence of conspiracy to aid the ruinous powers. A trial that would find you and your entire family line handed over to the local Imperial-funded purgers of heresy.
Lovely.
Solomon cursed his world's decree as his panicked search for food continued in vain, finding the pantry emptied of their last remaining recycled water and dried starch bars. His thirst was so consuming, he became tempted to drain the last drops of wine from the abandoned leather canteens of the renegades. But sense prevailed as he pictured the tainted sputum that formed at the bottom of the wineskins. Rushing to the bedroom, he remembered that he had taken a small flask of rationed water into the farm the previous day, a flask he had only quarter finished before making a wordless promise in the fields that he would give the rest to Adamina upon his return, along with the handful of stunted root vegetables pulled from their dying garden. He released a strangled yelp as he retrieved his farm jacket from the wardrobe, reached inside the lined pocket, and touched the cold metal of the flask within. He unscrewed the lid and, holding the flask in 2 hands, took great, desperate gulps, finishing the precious drink in seconds. In the other pocket, he found the vegetables, which he ate without hesitation, instantly wishing he had saved some water as he chewed through the frost-hardened crops and gritty dirt that covered them.
All right, Shoryu.
He slumped onto the cot, his vision blurred from welling tears as the memory of the last night appeared in his mind's eye. Adamina was now too weak to lift her head from the pillow, yet the sickness that consumed her and continued to worsen every day could do little to destroy her spirit. Her internal organs had been steadily failing.
Why is she still alive? Why? Like, why? No. This is all right, Vox.
It's a flashback. It's a flashback.
Hey, hospital, I got a heretic in here. What?
You got a heretic?
Don't worry about it. It's handled. It's okay. Everything is fine. Oh my God. Continuing.
For the last 6 months, and no medicines helped to alleviate the pain, but at least she could still smile. And when her husband returned from his field work, routinely sat beside her on the cot and ran his rough fingers through her thinning hair, she smiled. She smiled as Solomon whispered to her about his day, even managing a dry laugh when he regaled her on how 2 infant sons of a young tillerman had shadowed him all of the evening, hiding in the tall grass and calling him names that would make a voidsman blush. And as they lay together in silence, her husband nestled behind her, feeling his slowing breaths on her neck as he fell in and out of sleep. She smiled. But the smile would disappear forever when the village-wide alarm blared into terrific life. A staccato, electronic scream that wailed and echoed off the complex of farm buildings and empty grain silos. Bucking draft animals whinnied and kicked at their stable doors as the pitching klaxons increased in volume. They were here. Solomon leapt from Adamina's side and pawed at a floor panel in the living quarters. With a dull metallic click, the false floor came free, exposing the thin passageway that ran the length of the unit. Muffled cracks of approaching lasfire joined the cacophony of rising sirens, and he could hear field workers racing to defend the village, antique laslock rifles barking in their hands. The next minute played out like a repeating gallery of dread and death in Solomon's memory. A furious banging of fists at the farm hab door. An angered plea for Solomon to take up arms in the name of the God Emperor. The same voice bleating as searing lasbolts punched fist-sized holes through the door and burnt into the opposite wall, filling the room with rock dust and the smell of burnt ozone. Hooting laughter. Screaming. An obscene dirge of discordant sack pipes and fife. Adamina, roomy-eyed as he attempted to cradle her out of the cot. The crash of enemy weapon stocks hammering on the door as hinges and locks splintered under their blows. The look upon her face as his thin arms buckled, dropping her to the hard ground. The look upon her face when he left her in a withered heap to scramble towards the open hatch in the hab's foundations. The look upon her face when he climbed inside and replaced the panel behind him.
He abandoned
leaving
her?
to the mercy of the murderers that now crashed through their door.
He abandoned her?
Looking at his gaunt reflection in the tableside mirror, Solomon remained catatonic as the dark memories subsided. A man that he no longer recognized stared back from the smeared glass. It wasn't the unkempt beard, skeletal cheekbones, sunken eyes, or guttering candlelight that made him unrecognizable, but something deeper within. His soul had been irreversibly altered, diseased by self-preservation. He had become a loathsome wretch who could sacrifice the ones he loved for one more day in this cursed universe. In the corner of the room, a billhook machete glistened in the dancing candlelight.
I felt sorry for him. I no longer do.
A gift left by the dread enemy in their excitement to further their advance through the neighboring towns, no doubt. Solomon slowly stooped and picked up the blade, feeling the weighted hilt in his palm as he traced the tip of the knife lengthways down his arm, rehearsing how he would open his veins and join Mina in the Emperor's light.
She ain't gonna be waiting for you.
It was only when he suppressed his breath to slide the blade into his wrist that he realized he lacked the fortitude to take his own life. It was also in this moment he discovered the sound of wheezing intakes of breath were not his own. Standing the full height of the dark doorway was an abomination in guard uniform. The armored plate stretched over its massive frame and refashioned in the tasteless pink and purples of their Chaos God. A bronzed pauldron was attached to its right shoulder, with thick threaded bolts that screwed into the flesh. Its features were hidden behind an iron mask, a visage of a leching cherubim exquisitely embossed on the faceplate. Around its sinewy neck, lustrous golden jewelry hung heavy over its rattling chest. With an excited burble, the cherub-faced enemy lumbered into the candlelit room, its arms outspread, gesturing in spastic, deaf-mute grunts for Solomon to continue with his self-murder. The grotesque cherub was horrifically injured, its abdomen split from stomach to groin. The great rend of fat and muscle retched tar-black blood and knotted intestines onto the ground with every thudding step. But still the monster advanced. Solomon's body failed him once again as he voided his bladder. Death had finally arrived, shambling towards him in the form of this gibbering hulk.
Oh my god.
The wounded traitor tripped closer as he closed on Solomon, stumbling over a rope of its own entrails that bulged and burst out the sides of his heavy boot. With a falsetto shriek of agony, the giant fell and impaled itself onto the machete in Solomon's hand. Warm clots of gouting blood pumping as the blade's edge punctured effortlessly through the exposed flesh of the throat. The Chaos traitor knelt motionless at the farmer's feet, frothing gore and spit bubbling over the blade as the machete burrowed deeper into its regurgitating windpipe. With an appalling tearing sound, the traitor's head lolled backwards, barely held onto its wide shoulders by a flap of skin at the nape. In the Emperor's name, I got you, bastard, Solomon thought, with a semblance of bravery as he stared into the dead, dilating eyes within the iron mask.
I got bad news for you.
The village alarms had long been silenced. Yet another sound of sirens carried in the night. No, not sirens.
No.
A mourning communal moan. The farmer, with the gore-encrusted billhook still held tight in one hand, strained as he pushed the dead brute aside, the body finally thudding sideways into an heirloom chest before crashing to the ground. On his hands and knees, he crawled through the adjacent room, and with his heart thundering in his chest, peeked from the splintered doorway of his home. Advancing through the low, ghosting mist of the outlying cropland were hundreds of casualties of war. Solomon saw flashes of pink armor in the ebbing light of the lantern-lit procession. At the center of the march, a chorus of guard and civilian prisoners wailed from inside metal cage sarcophagi that lay stacked high on beast-drawn carts. Hunchbacked standard-bearers of the Lord of Excess flanked the assembly, their heretical banners flourishing in the night wind to the thrumming of a drummer's march. A pained and rasping call from an unseen hornsman stopped the caravan near the outfarm at the edge of the village. Hooded lackeys cowered under the lash of a foul and giggling insect thing as they fetched Hessian sacks and ragged tarps from a looted Imperial Trojan that belched forward on promethium fumes. Bawling prisoners were now being uncaged and paraded, the healthier ones taken aside and butchered for the pot, whilst others were crucified for sport. These were the lucky ones. They were setting up camp. No escape now. The few infantry troops that weren't tending to their injuries or indulging other needs formed a scouting party and moved quickly into the village. They soundlessly made their advance towards the homesteads, with a frightening proficiency for followers of the arch-enemy, their guard training not completely tainted by the ruinous powers. They stabbed into ashen hay piles with bayoneted las rifles, one of the heretics cheering as he ripped his weapon free of a pile of straw, the writhing body of a young boy on the end of his sticking blade. With another thrust to the jugular, the lad lay still, and the search party continued with added fervor. What remained of Solomon's strength and sanity left in a rushing surge of panic. His knees buckled, having to hastily prop himself against the wall to avoid the noise of his body crashing to the floor and inevitably alerting the marauder scouts. His bloodshot eyes flickered as his cerebrum once more set aflame with hallucinations.
Lovely.
Mina, the temple of flesh and stone, the wide-grinned demon, the half-decapitated giant in the iron mask. The iron mask. The mask. The mask. Solomon knew what needed to be done for him to have at least a sliver of a chance at surviving this night. He reached over to the stripped body armor, abandoned next to the broken traitor on the torture wheel, and worked the chest and shoulder plates over his emaciated frame.
No!
The stench of caustic sweat from inside the armor turned his gut, nearly causing him to lose consciousness once again. The filthy armor weighed heavy on his shoulders as he made his way back to the chambers, hastily unbuckling the thick leather straps that held the iron mask on the hanging head of the brute. He felt a pull of resistance as the cherubim visor slid from the pitted head of the traitor, stringy discharge and peels of skin interweaving and gripping onto the iron from within. He raised the mask to his head and fumbled each buckle, feeling the residue of pus and skin mold like soft wax around his own face as each strap was tightened. Cupping his hands, Solomon scooped dark blood from the floor and smeared it across the exposed cloth of his farm tunic. He caught another reflection of himself in the mirror. Once there stood a man, a cowardly wretch no doubt, but still a man. Now only a demon remained, a demon that wanted to live, a demon that would forsake all humanity to see the sun rise over the red fields of Arvum once more.
I need to schedule at least an hour and a half of the mind cleanser. Oh my god, dude. Like, seriously? I understand, but why?
Why not?
I'm getting up the second part now. Okay, so Hobbit says he needs SCP-999. Slacker says get the pugs. Biggest needs emotional support pugs. Alright. Oh, no. Okay. So, the one thing that they do not do in the books is they do not do this level of displaying of what it's like for normal people caught up in all this. And this isn't even like the heavy hitters. This isn't the Emperor's Children. This isn't, a cult directly dedicated. This is a group of just literal cultists. And they're the ones doing this stuff. I love this. The visualization was on point. Vox, your voice lends so much to it. One thing that I do...
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Like, one thing that I was asked on your Vox, on your Vox, I'm an idiot, disregard. One thing was asked on your Discord was asked by Chaotic Voices, and what has your acting training been, and what's your room and equipment like?
Okay, so acting training. Oh, I loved drama when I was at school, so that was a huge thing for me. I wasn't a particularly academic student. I loved drama, loved music, loved even dance, if you can believe it. And basically, that transpired to me taking a performing arts course at college. And then it was kind of like it went off to becoming a musician. I joined bands. I played in bands for a lot of years. And then I came back to performing on the stage, doing musicals of all things. But all of these things kind of like, it was a desire to perform in some way. And when I was doing a lot of work, a lot of menial jobs, I was thinking, what am I missing from my life? And it was the acting side of things. So the acting kind of training, it's not really been training. As I've done college courses and school courses and everything, but it's more about enjoying what I do. And I think even though I do enjoy my job, don't get me wrong, I love my job, but I teach drama of all things. I teach drama and to special needs colleges, and I love that side of my life, but there was something missing, and I thought, okay, what can I do to further that desire? And I actually asked, I don't know if you know about Death of Hope. Have you heard of Death of Hope before?
Yeah, I've heard about it.
So Death of Hope was it's an amazing animation by a chap called Mark. I'm sure some of you have seen that on the chat.
Yeah,
and I
actually did
sent
a
him a
breakdown.
message.
I actually did
Yeah.
a breakdown of Death of Hope on this channel a while back when it first came out.
So Death of Hope, I sent them an email asking if they needed any voice actors, and at the time they were like, no, we're okay, we're fine. So I thought, okay, what can I do myself? I needed to fill a gap, a little bit of a gap. So I I started my own YouTube channel, which is Vox in the Void, but at the time it was Warhammer Fan Readings. I mean, that was such a sad name, but Warhammer Fan Readings, and them a kind of almost like a demo reel. And the demo reel, Mark liked it so much that he said, okay, so Paul, would you like to be in Death of Hope? And I said, of course I would. And that was the start of my Warhammer journey and acting, was through Mark and the crew on Death of Hope. So I got to play 2 characters in Death of Hope. And then obviously the Games Workshop hammer came down about animations, which was an absolute blow to everybody in the community at the time. I think it's changing now.
It's starting to.
I think it's starting to. I think they're starting to realise that, well, where are the fans? The fans are in the people who are making these animations, who are making these audio dramas, and making these things, like bringing a new love to the property. And I think that they're realising this. I think they're kind of backpedaling a little bit, and they're realising that the fans are. That's what makes Warhammer, and it always has and it always will do. Is the fans. Okay, it's not a business model. It's the fans. It's the love of the lore. It's the love of the universe. And I think, and I have to thank Mark a lot. And you know, I can't say anything in particular what Mark's going to do in the future with Death of Hope. I've got a feeling that something might be happening to rekindle that love and rekindle that animation, because a lot of people, I mean, if you look at the numbers, it's over 1 million views on Death of Hope. That goes to show that a lot of people want to see more of it.
Well, that goes without saying. With
So that is my kind of. Sorry. That was a long answer.
No, you're fine. I can see that I can see what's going on with my mic. I'll have to fix it after the stream. This is going to require me taking it down and actually troubleshooting stuff like that. So I apologize in advance. Let's see.
Let me answer a few things from this chat that's going on right now. Hobbit, I'm still butthurt that Sodas had to stop making Warhammer content. Me too. Me too. That was some of the best stuff I've ever seen with Warhammer. Even though it was done with the Steam filmmaking, the animation software, was some of the most, I don't know, visceral animation I've ever seen to do with Warhammer. And I am gutted for that man. I've talked to him a couple of times online, and I'm absolutely gutted for that man.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I am really not sure why people went after him the way they did. It didn't make any sense to me, because he was put in the same kind of position that everyone was, where they had to make it, like, really just make a decision on what they were going to do, what they weren't going to do. Because nobody can fight a multi-billion-dollar company.
I heard that Soda's almost, I don't know if he got a source filmmaker. Well done, Andre. Yeah, source filmmaker. Okay, so I heard that he got hired by Games Workshop. I don't know if that's true or not, but he disappeared.
Yeah. Neon Cobra asked, who is 40k's best girl, and why is it Inquisitor Vale?
Oh, I can't answer that. I don't know much about Warhammer girls, to be honest.
It's Latara Sarin. Let's get real here. It's Latara Sarin.
Slanesh? Is that the one who thirsts?
No, Latara Sarin is the undisputed queen of the. Yeah, she's the undisputed queen of the world eaters.
I'll go with your answer, my friend. I don't know much about the females in Warhammer. It's all about the men. The men.
Yes, but Latara Sarin was definitely my like she is the number one for me as far as everything else goes. Hold on a second. Let's see. From my own Discord, the Hive Mind asked, "How did I meet the Hospitaller?" Well, it's kind of funny how I met the Hospitaller. Me and her met in a game, and she hated me because, well, I was a dick, and I still am a dick. But she couldn't stand me, and then all of a sudden she grew to like me, and then we've been together for 14 years. Well, no, yeah, getting on 13, 14 years.
That's a long time. That's
Oh,
good.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's good. It has been a long. It has been like we actually went out today and we were talking about what we were gonna do because our wedding anniversary is coming up in a few months. So that's gonna be good.
Well done, mate. Congratulations.
Thank you. The Amber King asked, "Brother, who is your favorite character in Warhammer, and why is it Erebus?"
It's not Erebus.
I'm glad.
I think my favorite character that I've ever. The thing is, right? A lot of people think that I am a huge, like a lore master. I know everything about lore in Warhammer, and I really don't. I'm sure this question will be asked later on about how we got into Warhammer, but I think my personal love of Warhammer has only really started over the last maybe 5 years. I've loved Warhammer since I was a kid, but my actual love for the lore has only come in the last 5 years. And I would say that Ibram Gaunt is my favorite.
I can definitely like that one. My favorite character of all time, of course, is Sebastian Yarrick. Flat out. Get her idols for your no. No, biggest no. The clan asks, and after this question, guys, we're gonna go ahead and start up with part 2. And Declan asks, question for you and Void: what was the saddest bromance that was broken, like Karn and Sigismund, Tarek and Loken, or the like?
The saddest bromance.
Yeah.
Well, I suppose I'll have to go with. Like I said, I'm no lore master, so what I learn from Warhammer is usually from the work that I do for other YouTubers. So, for example, the Amber King, who the question just came from. I'm sure all of you guys have heard of Amber King. If you haven't, go and check him out. He is absolutely amazing at what he does on YouTube. And I was asked to play the part of Dantiok, Iron Warrior, and there was Pollux as well. So you've got like the two opposing forces becoming friends there. Like it was an amazing part to play, and I was really grateful for Amber King for letting me to play that, allowing me to play that role.
The basic thing about I actually did the Bromance 30K series for 5ish Minute Lore on those two. But if I can't pick those, then I will definitely go with Saul Tarvitz and Nathaniel Garrow. Those would be the two I go with.
Oh yeah, that's a good.
That would be the duo that I went, because yeah, they were forcefully parted, but they saved the entire galaxy from chaos. In any case, we're gonna get started with Act 2. I am gonna need therapy after this, and service pugs. Luckily, I have them.
I hope you enjoy this next part.
I'm pretty sure I won't, but thank you for the support.
You will.
Oh God, here it goes. Ah!
Through the tall trees, Solomon caught glimpses of creatures he still had not been able to fathom. Arvum's scorching sun broke through the canopy of the forest, casting dark, monstrous shadows on the thorny foliage as the thump of the march continued. He had spent 7 cruel days hidden in the company of the barbaric enemy. By the grace of the Emperor, he had always been positioned on the comparative safety of the flanks during their maraud through the woodland province of Jungsberg. He had remained inside the clandestine disguise of the armor and mask whilst being swept from one mass genocide to the next. For the last 2 days, he had marched alongside the rear guard battalion known to its followers as the Vessels of Bacchus.
Later,
In this time, he had seen acts of pain and suffering inflicted on his kinsfolk unbelievable in nature. He had witnessed entire settlements sacked and raped by an army that only desired to soak in the pleasure of the world's misery. He had been party to the desecration of the god Emperor and the missionary work of the ecclesiarchy when the Imperial Hospital of Twinsgate was razed to its foundations by a platoon of traitor tanks. It was impossible for Solomon to forget the sight of the child soldiers, welded to the pintle-mounted guns on top of the vehicles, singing their own infantile lullabies of war with maniacal joy as they fired into the flaming building and the burning civilians within. He remembered how the captured preachers and Medicaid personnel of the hospital were relieved of their limbs and rolled down a nearby rocky cliff face by bored grunts who wagered on which of the screaming torsos would crack apart first. But nothing could prepare Solomon for the warp-spawned monsters that ripped their way into his world and bolstered the burgeoning ranks of the arch-enemy. There were giant, multi-limbed beasts that licked the air with serpentine tongues whilst they scuttled at the front of the advance, exuding a pheromone cloud that only intensified the hedonism. From dark, unspeakable rituals came the Maidens of Excess, slender, intoxicating creatures that trilled their praises to Slanesh. Solomon found it impossible to ascertain their true form as dark powers cloaked them in shifting visions of beauty and revulsion. Corrupted guard soldiers would bade and leer at the androgynous demons, their lusting never quenched even when their appetites always ended with some part of their bodies being removed by the snapping clawed hands of the maidens. The abhorrent creature that ever followed behind Solomon was the same hysterical insect beast he had seen when the injured caravan had taken camp outside of his farmstead. A barbed lash was stitched into the chitinous shell of one of its stalked forearms, and the creature clearly enjoyed its role as taskmaster. The wounded and sick would feel the horrific bite of the whip every time they failed to keep step, or simply for its own twisted amusement. Solomon thanked the throne for the plundered flak armor that absorbed most of the insect's attacks. He also mouthed a silent prayer for the iron mask that protected his weeping, untainted face from being revealed. Solomon's world had become a bastardized form of sight through the narrow eye slits of the mask. Peripheral vision was stripped away, and the damned weight of the iron made turning his head an unbearable task. He was forever staring forward, forever marching alongside the raiders that devastated the land he had called home for 50 Terran years. He likened the blinkered view of his world to the coin-operated pick viewers he used as a child on the Cardinal Sea promenade. It was a good way to distance himself from the surrounding madness. It was the only way. Vicious knots of vines that twined and wrapped around wide trees snagged on Solomon's ragged, filthy clothing, slicing into his skin as he attempted to push past. He slung the looted auto rifle he was holding, unsheathed his bill-hooked blade with his free hand, and began cutting a path through the dense forest, all the while hearing his looming insect handler chitter and threaten with its own swipes behind. The march continued until Arvum's burning sun had set over the sparse awning, the vibrant red sky of day melting into the brackish brown of dusk. Solomon dropped to his knees, suppressing a scream of agony, when his handler gave him one more lash for good measure across the back of his calves. Emitting a clicking vocalization, the creature skittered off towards the forward ranks, a stinking yellow trail oozing onto the forest floor from underneath its segmented carapace. Solomon sat back in the spot he fell. He felt the cold, damp moss soak through his clothes as he rubbed his cramping legs and tenderly pulled up the bottom of his trousers to inspect his latest wounds. The barbed whip had caused 3 deep cuts that traversed both legs, fresh, warm blood running into his boots.
Okay, so all of that is no, but secondly, can you guys hear me in both ears now? Can everybody hear me now?
He gripped his calves and tried to stem the bleeding, watching the reddening of infection already setting in. Tearing 2 thin strips from his tunic, he wrapped them tightly around his thin legs before picking up his rusted auto rifle. Solomon had never had to fire a weapon in his life, for the life of a field teller on Arvum was as close to peace you could find in the galaxy. There would be the seasonal leech fly infestation in the animal holdings, or Maya rat swarm that would render a harvest unusable, but that was about the extent of their troubles. That was until the corruption of chaos arrived in system and tore that piece apart. Feeling the plasteel rifle heavy in his arms was nearly as alien to him as anything he had witnessed over the last week. The weapon had been thrust unceremoniously into his hands by a wizened old armorer when leaving the camp at the farm, along with 3 magazines of ammunition, a toothless grin, and a suspiciously slimy handshake. He brought the rifle up to his shoulder and imagined drumming a whole magazine into the insectoid beast. How the recoil would surge through his entire body. It made him feel good, powerful, a warrior. He quickly dropped his aim when he heard the cracking of feet on underbrush and felt the presence of something standing next to him. With a great effort, Solomon turned and tilted his head upwards. A stunningly beautiful man dressed only in a golden weave robe stood over him, staring.
A stunningly beautiful man. I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going.
Down with white, blue eyes. He presented as a member of misplaced royalty in this sea of unwashed foot soldiers and monsters of the warp. The stranger held out a perfectly manicured hand and ushered him to stand with the grace and poise of high nobility, even inclining his head in a slight bow of respect when Solomon took his offer to rise. A strange, comforting sensation flowed through their touch. Solomon was led slowly towards the main throng of soldiers and worshippers that had congregated inside a wide clearing of the forest.
That's what I was thinking, Michael.
Tiny, huffing familiars no larger than the canopy-dwelling marmosets above shouldered minuscule sacks and followed behind the beautiful man. The man stopped, released his hold on Solomon's clammy hand, and leisurely turned so they faced one another.
No.
The 2 men stood the same height, but there was an air of bravado that made the regal stranger appear much larger in stature.
No.
A perfect straightness in his posture. A chiseled, well-coiffed head held high on a slender neck.
No.
The grandiose figure exhaled a breath and derobed slowly, all the while staring at Solomon with unblinking eyes that seemed pure white in the dull wash of the moonlight. He folded his golden robe with perfect practice technique and passed it to a second group of familiars who squabbled and fought over who would carry the garment away. The naked man immediately began to maneuver Solomon's arms, head, and legs into a multitude of positions, never satisfied with the results as he cursed under his breath, pacing around him in a circle. After an hour of relentless levering and posing, the stranger clicked his long fingers, and the sack-carrying familiars gathered around his feet, clucking as they climbed on each other like circus performers, making an organic ladder to their master's hand. First, an oval plate was passed upwards that the naked man took with his left hand. A small leather bag was next, which was placed onto the ceramic dish. The stranger untied the pouch and let the contents spill onto the indented plate. Paintbrushes. The small, bristled brushes of an artisan lay on the pallet. An impossibly old woman approached, a canvas and easel far too big for her misshapen frame tied across her back. The simian servant who stood at the top of the organic ladder screeched and grabbed at the air wildly when the artist plucked him from the group and tied.
Okay, the last time I saw anything Slaneshi-oriented doing paints, it was not Bob Ross. Captain Tybolt says, I needed an adult. I think we all do.
To squeeze around its midriff. A squirt of thick gore plopped onto the pallet as the artist milked the flailing animal. The painter tossed the emptied, lifeless beast to the ground, picked up a fine haired brush and began to swirl and blend the blood and juice, expectorating long strands of saliva into the pallet to loosen the mix. A group of doting underlings enclosed on Solomon, carefully adorning his armor and iron mask with long white bird feathers that adhered to his person with a putrid-smelling tar. He was made to stand motionless as the painter worked. Every brushstroke upon the canvas was meticulous and executed to perfection. Every sublime shape and line was measured artistry.
No.
Throughout the pained stillness, Solomon could hear a frenzy of commotion behind him. The infernal sounds of laughter that accompanied the march this far was now transforming into a full orchestration of pain. An orgy of death and incantations was happening mere meters from Solomon.
No.
Yet still he faced forward for the artist to complete his work. Something fleshy and turgid rutted against his back, but it was quickly shooed away by one of the artist's retinue, the painter screaming in irritation at the interruption. A wind of aromatic incense overwhelmed Solomon's senses as the artist allowed the old crone to rub his body with the oil. The man composed himself, waved the old lady away, and recommenced with his great work.
There ain't nothing great about this.
A small group of onlookers had now gathered behind the canvas, hollering and gasping with open-mouthed awe to the methodical artist feverishly capturing every moment of the bacchanal.
No.
Emerald green sparks of light illuminated the dark woodland in flashing still-frame images, and the sudden heat of a blazing furnace seared into Solomon's back. Through the mask, he saw the artist drop his palette and brush, his sheening body trembling in pure anticipation. The ancient woman by the artisan's side turned the canvas. It was a masterwork of misery, a beautifully rendered piece of art that Solomon damned himself for admiring. In the foreground stood the masked creature he had become, the likeness striking in its realism. His arms were held wide from the body, hands painted with the palms facing the stars. It reminded Solomon of the religious imagery that had always been prevalent across the world of Arvum.
Nope.
From beautiful sketches of the god emperor that lined imperial cult texts and prayer books, to the stories of the long-dead gods of terror he heard whispers of when working in the fields. But this work held no warmth of the emperor's holy light, or an omnipotent deity's blessing.
No.
This was demonic blood art that shimmered and bubbled in the green firelight, dancing off the stretched canvas in the flickering glow. Bleak images of ritualistic sacrificial murder covered the remaining artwork, a tapestry of torture so intricate it was almost as Solomon was looking through a glass window and into the very madness of the warp itself. Flocks of squawking birds exploded skyward from their nests as a sonorous rumble shook and bowed the trees to their roots. The earth tremored underneath
This
Solomon,
is-
threatening to split open at his feet. More clashing colors bloomed around the thicket clearing, igniting the area in a myriad of brilliant purples, pinks, and green. Satisfied the artist
Hey,
did not
Hobbit.
require his muse any longer, Solomon slowly turned on his heels, and his heart stopped when he finally laid his eyes on the nightmare that was happening behind him. Under a colossal bonfire of cremated bodies, an army of zealots 100 deep knelt and kissed at the earth. The burnt remains seemed to writhe with life. Green flames roasted the skin from their bones, popping and crackling like cindered wood. More jerking movements from the mass of dead heretics. A fluctuating tidal surge of blackened limbs that reached and fell.
This is...
The
no.
bodies were not alive. The monster that birthed from the bones and ash was. Bursting from the crest of the bonfire, a greater demon of Slanesh roared its arrival. The horned abomination snapped its bovine jaws, its 4 limbs scything the air as it acclimated to its new material surroundings, and to the battalion of loud, worshipping soldiers who thrust their weapons into the air in salute.
Why?
Unburning flames licked up clawed reptilian legs as the demon gracefully descended the mountain of corpses in long, sensual strides. As a payment to their dark god, slavering hedonists offered the gifts of flesh and death. Whimpering men and women of the ecclesiarch lay in a row, each one bound spread eagle to 4 metal stakes that had been hammered into the thick ashy dirt at the base of the bonfire. They screamed for mercy when the monster towered over them. They screamed for absolution to the whistle of bone flutes and the
Hobbit,
beat of primal
there is
drums.
more than exterminatus needed here.
They just screamed when the creature skewered each one in turn from bowel to brain. Solomon dry heaved inside the mask. He feared the mere hint of repulsion would alert suspicion, but there wasn't enough food in his belly to vomit anyhow. The artist had returned to his frantic painting, immortalizing the arrival of the monstrosity that now feasted on a mess of gushing remnants that hung limply from its claws. The naked artisan took a step back to admire his finished magnum opus and bathe in the total adoration of his familiars, their squeals of delight the keenest, purest pleasure he could feel. He turned to face his audience, closed his perfect eyes, and embraced the
God.
rapturous applause. He died quick and messy, as whistling lightning bolts tore through his lean ribs, igniting the scented oils that sheened across his body. The artisan's retinue watched in despair, wailing in collective lamentation when their master folded into the mud. A bright star burst from the treetops as a flare round detonated. A moment of stunned silence filled the entirety of the forest before a hail of coordinated las fire exploded from the outskirts of the clearing. Heavy ordnance zeroed the bonfire and cultists that continued praying to their dark god, disintegrating the ritual in a creeping firestorm.
Lovely.
The gigantic 4-armed demon screamed in bestial ecstasy as las bolts and hard rounds winged it from all directions. Solomon dived into a shallow ravine, stumbling and rolling down the mud bank as shards of light zipped overhead in trained bursts of
Fuck 'em all.
gunfire. This was no militia outfit, Solomon thought, as he held his autogun tight to his palpitating chest. This was the Guard. Over the crack of las rifles and roar of returning counterfire, a cyclic, clanking stomp drew near. A tiger-striped sentinel broke into the clearing, emerging from the shadows like a gigantic jungle cat, with its autocannon spitting brutal death into the front ranks of the enemy. Heavy shells thumped into the dead artist's retinue as the sentinel raked the battlefield, turning the familiars inside out and the old woman into a bloody mist, her decapitated head rolling into the ravine to stop by Solomon's foot.
Yeah, pick that up, buddy.
Solomon had little time to duck as the androgynous maidens leapt over the ravine, moving at incredible speed to meet their attackers in bloody melee. The armored sentinel repositioned its firing arc and attempted to train its heavy weapon on the acrobatic demonettes that weaved and shimmered in the beam of the vehicle's searchlight.
Aye, Iron, we're purging heretics.
The autocannon fired, chewing up the forest floor and pulping surrounding trees, but having no effect on the trilling creatures that were nearly upon the armored vehicle. The war
Kill Team Hungry says the Cockblock Squad has arrived.
Walker vented thick exhaust smoke as it backpedaled into the shadowy forest. Flamer troops pushed past to cover its retreat, hosing the screeching demonettes with burning promethium.
Now this is
Another
pod
flare
racing!
burst turned night into day. Twisting rockets screamed over Solomon's head towards a squad of traitors attempting to assemble a bipod-mounted heavy weapon. The warheads detonated on target and turned the
Thanks,
forest
Chico.
floor into a quagmire of slush and blood. A spirited war cry from hundreds of Lasmen echoed throughout the forest when they charged from the darkness, their barking commissars ordering them all to fight to the last man.
Yes!
Ferocious gunfire cut the first rank of charging guard to pieces. The second rank filed into the clearing and vaulted their dead and dying comrades, snapping off rounds and lobbing grenades. Hooded, heretical thralls rushed to meet them in open combat, madly swinging scimitar blades and discharging their antique lead throwers. They proved no match for the proficiency and firepower of the guard in close combat. The pheromone-emitting chimeric monsters fared better.
Yeah.
A band of the horrors flanked from the west of the Imperial charge, cutting and disemboweling their human enemies with ease. Noxious, hypnotic clouds swirling behind. The handful of soldiers not dead or desperately holding their organs inside their bodies shuffled in all directions, entranced by the mirages of pleasure fabricated within the wake of the terrors.
Damn it.
The intoxicated troopers died with stupid, drunken smiles across their faces when traitor infantry closed the distance and ran them through with crude bayonets. Blaring Imperial battle hymns from its distorted vox speakers, the armored sentinel smashed into the fray once more.
Thank you, Hobbit. Hobbit says this is far more sensual and arousing than before.
The rhythmic crump of the
Thank you.
autocannon matching the timing of its heavy pneumatic steps. A platoon of traitor guards welcomed the pain of death with gleeful open arms, laughing and pleasuring themselves as limbs and chunks of meat ripped from their bodies.
I really didn't need that mental image. What the fuck?
Accept it, my friend. Accept it.
I did not need that mental image. What the fuck? Look, we know you worship Slaneshi, but tone it the fuck down.
I do. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Jesus
I can't.
Christ, what the... Oh my
do it.
God. Hobbit, can you hear me well now? Good God, why?
They are
Look.
jacking while fighting aid. They
I
are
don't
jacking
care.
It.
I don't care what happens. If I see a bunch of infantry charged across the field with bayonets fixed to rifles jacking off running right at me, I'm running. You can call me a coward. I'm fucking done. Whatever they're on, I don't want to be near it. Oh my God. Tybolt says for the second time, Vox, I just want to have a talk.
I'm up for it. You want to talk to me, my friend? You can talk to me.
Oh my God, here we go. Continuing. Jesus, I didn't need that mental image.
Solomon cowered and tucked his quaking body into the long reeds that lined the ravine. Thumping blood pounded in his ears. He struggled to catch his breath, suffocating panic gripping his heart and lungs. A frag grenade impacted nearby that left him deaf in the moment. He felt choked by fear now, like invisible fingers around his throat that were never going to let go. He needed to be free of the damned mask. He unbuckled the straps and let the iron visor thud to the ground with a gasping breath. The ringing in his ears faded, and it was shocking how much being enclosed in the mask had hidden from Solomon. Not only in vision, but sound also. He cupped his ears as sibilant bolts fizzed from every direction, smacking into thick trees and showering him with las-heated bark. Solomon lifted his head above the reed line and risked a brief view of the battle. In the descending flare light, a grizzled commissar launched himself into a group of heretics with a bellowed prayer and a chainsword biting, their armor no more than wet paper to the revving teeth of the weapon.
Go, Commissar.
Flanking the commissar were ochre, poncho-clad troopers that called out targets, cheering as they scored kills with every volley from their shouldered rifles.
Nice.
The guard was winning this fight. Solomon wanted to stand and surrender, but his legs were jellied and useless. He wanted to shout for salvation, but his tongue was swollen. He wanted to crawl out of the ravine, but a hard, steel-capped kick to his ribs sent him spiraling back into the shallow stream. The assailant jumped into the water and lunged at Solomon with a punch knife wedged between his fingers. Solomon pivoted onto his back, raised the water-clogged autogun from his side, and pulled the trigger. The soldier wavered for a second, hacked a spray of blood, and fell face first into the stream. His militarum fatigue stained red from the giant exit wound in his spine. His first true kill. A soldier of the Imperium. On the urgent
I don't care what happens
of the
to him.
commissariat, a focused swarm of shells, bolts, and rockets traced across the clearing. The greater demon had been waiting with a patience at odds with its monstrous form, savoring the furious violence of battle from the rear. Now, its anticipation sated, the giant monster barreled into the fighting lines of the Imperial Guard with a devastating speed and ferocity that was almost impossible to follow. The tide of war turned in a minute of whirling savagery. Battle-hardened veterans of countless heroic campaigns were chewed to mushy sludge in a heartbeat. Desperation spread like a quick-acting nerve gas across the field. Soldiers
Solomon
of the
needs to
Imperium,
die.
their minds full with fear and hopelessness, broke from cover and began to flee from the battle. They turned on each other with fists and blade as morale snapped like brittle bones, officers fighting like animals to keep control of their routing squads. Retreating guardsmen dropped everywhere, executed by enemy fire or by their own superiors for cowardice. Solomon saw the sentinel at the tree line rock under the weight of the demons that scaled its frame. The crewman tried to shake them loose, frantically swiveling the machine and strafing with panicked, clumsy movements that only crushed and maimed his fellow guardsmen underfoot. The walker detonated in a superheated ball of white flame when the climbing monsters sliced into the vehicle's ammunition housing. Huge secondary explosions ruptured through the reserve troops when the wrecked Sentinel's rocket pods cooked off in the inferno. The commissars had gotten their wish. The guard had fought to the last man. Solomon watched the greater demon hoist the lone survivor into the air with ease. Tendons stretched and snapped when the creature slowly tore his chain blade-wielding arm from its socket, relishing in the human's agony and dangling him like a wooden toy, before smashing the screaming man on a rock like an egg. The battle was over, and Solomon was alive. Hundreds of corpses, both human and heretic, carpeted the glade, yet he drew breath. The husks of dead demons sparked and returned to the immaterium in flashes of pink and orange flame. But Solomon remained. He knelt and drank from the stream like a dog, unperturbed by the dead soldier's blood that flowed within the current of the water and tainted his mouth with a coppery aftertaste.
Why?
A familiar, chittering noise was quickly nearing, a sound of vile insect legs weaving through the leafy underbrush. Solomon scrambled to find the iron mask, sweeping clumps of reeds and tall grass aside to the encroaching sound of a whipping lash. A metal, cherubic face smiled up from the sodden mud bank. Solomon returned the smile. The vessel of Bacchus's number had been decimated by the night raid, but it did little to slow their march through the wild woods the following day. Solomon's insect handler, now fat from its morning feed, lethargically spurred his charges forward with half-hearted threats burping from its sphincter mouth.
Oh, that's disgusting.
How Solomon longed to put a bullet into that disgusting beast. Watch it squirm as its life pissed from the hole.
Oh, what?
Not yet, he thought to himself. Wait. He understood what it was like now, to feel a weapon buck in his hands and make something die. Too bad it had to be the Imperial soldier who took his murderer's virginity, and not this foul spawn of the warp.
That's a bad line.
Solomon caught
That's a
himself
bad
smiling
line.
under the mask as he remembered the rearward force of the rifle. It felt good. Powerful. He had survived another night, and this gave him hope. Even when the battalion arrived at the edge of the wood and thrust into the bloody siege of Arvum's capital city.
Oh God, he's taking place in this. Why? seriously, at this point, I want this guy thrown at least in front of a chimera. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, so when is this... there are things I need to happen in part 3. Like, I need these things to happen now. Because, starting up this one second. I need things to happen in the next part of this. First of all, Hobbit, can you hear me now? And secondly, let's get to some more questions real quick. Daddy
That's
Vito,
right.
what's up?
That's right, Quipper. I said that's right, Quipper. He's only 3% corrupted. That's all. It's
He's
just
like
3%.
He's the Diet Coke of corrupted.
He's Coke Zero of corrupted.
Like 1 calorie, not enough. But yeah, like at this point, I just want to see him get blapped. A sphincter mouth. Yeah, Chester, that was quite disturbing. That was quite disturbing. Emperor Eagle asks, and this is a good question for both of us. He says, "What type of editing and recording software do you use?" And also, he dares me to say one nice thing about the Tau besides how good they taste next to mashed potatoes. Sure, they taste wonderful next to asparagus.
What software do you use?
Myself, I'm going to be upgrading to Adobe Audition when
very good.
In the next few days. Now that I have my new microphone, I was my recording setup is it used to be a I actually still have it over there. I haven't shipped it off yet. It's a snowball. It was a snowball ice, and then before that, it was actually this right here. The first few videos I recorded were actually on this, and I bought a snowball ice. I recently just upgraded to a Samson G-Track Pro. It's the same microphone that Baltimore uses. It's got a pop filter, everything else like that. I had to switch over. In some things I had to learn on the fly. Like today, I didn't know I was recording in only one ear. I had to switch to a mono track, which distributed everything, because I'm using a certain kind of recording setting, which will cut out a lot of the noise from outside. For any kind of voice work that I've done before this, I've used Audacity to do all of my editing, and some with SoundForge. But I'm going to be going to Adobe Audition just because it was highly recommended by Chris Glass, and also recommended by a few other people that do some voice work that I've talked to.
Cool. Yeah, I use Reaper. I don't know if you ever heard of Reaper before, but Reaper is a really amazing piece of software, and all of the effects that people always ask me about, Space Marine voices, the grill effect that I use, that all comes from in Reaper. It's like a all-for-one piece of software. It's amazing. It really, really is. I use a Rode Procaster microphone as well. I upgraded from I think my early stuff I was using the Blue. Oh, what's it called?
The Blue Yeti?
Just a Blue mic. Yeah, that's it. The Blue Yeti, and an amazing microphone. It picked up everything. Picked up everything that you said, and not just what you said, but any sound in the background. It would just pick it up, and it would become this rigmarole of editing for like 2 hours just to try and get that background sound out of your recording. And the Rode Procaster is been a life send for me.
Well, one thing that with the new setup that I have, I'm hoping, because there's still some noise in the background there. You probably heard some cars go by just a second ago, but I'm hoping that this reduces the sound of that by a huge measure, because the blue snowball that I had before, when you buy a microphone and you're looking to do recording, there is there's all sorts of settings to go through. But I'm using a Cardioid microphone right now.
Cardio, yeah.
Yeah, and that only records like from here. Like if I move off to here, you can still hear me, but I'm subdued. The same if I move off to here. But right in front, it goes through. Yeah, I have mine no train yet. But eventually what I'm planning to do is, you can see in the background behind me, I have those foam pieces right there. Me and the hospital, we're eventually going to move, and I'm going to have a room that's just going to be set up for me to record and everything like that in. And that's when I'm going to really like settle into doing a lot more recording and be happier doing it. 2 favorite Primarchs, Loyalist, and Traitor, and why? Go!
Oh my god. I'm a traitor boy. I'm not a loyalist boy. I don't find them interesting enough. Traitor is all I think, from all the voice work that I've done and for the voice work I've helped other people do, I think Kurz has been my favourite traitor Primarch to look into and to research and to voice. I would say Kurz, yeah.
For myself,
I'm trying to think of a loyalist.
Yeah, for myself, I've always for myself, as far as loyalists go, my favorite loyalist Primarch so far, and I'm getting to the later stages of the Siege of Terra, but my favorite loyalist Primarch so far has been surprisingly Jakatai Khan, because it's
I can see that.
very surprisingly Jakatai Khan. Originally it was Rogel, because Rogel and Sigismund, that whole story. But as far as traders go, Perturabu is hands down my favorite trader Primarch. Hands down, with Kurz being with hands down a close second. So, and of course, if you ask about Lorgar, I'm going to tell you he's barely a Primarch in my view. He's just a shit. Warg asks, hi there, Vox. Yes, he's just a shit. No. He's just a shit. Warg asks, hi there, Vox. I have a question about narrations. How do you gather the material for a project? Let's say you're going to narrate a story and use an artwork. Are you just using it and giving credit, or do you go to the authors and artists directly?
That's a really good question.
And what advice can you give to a new lad who's about to be a voice author / narrator?
Okay, so at the start of my YouTube channel, I reached out to certain authors who were writing on certain Reddit channels, and I said, would you mind if I did this for my YouTube? And they were like, that's absolutely fine. It's brilliant. Go for it. And I was so happy that I would have that that opportunity to narrate their work. And after I did the first couple of ones, they started coming to me, and that was amazing. So I would have emails from authors saying, would you like to narrate my work? And that's when I started the Discord as well. And on the Discord, I have a writer's lounge where people can send me stuff. People can talk to me about if their work would be well fitted for the channel. And I would look at it, and 99.9% of it definitely is. The community of Warhammer authors is amazing. Oh yeah. You just don't get it. Like, if you looked at like fanfiction.net or whatever it is, fanfiction.com, whatever it is, most of the stuff on there is all about sexualizing a lot of the characters. Right. But with Warhammer, it's not like that at all. It's a true love of the lore, a true love of the stories, and wanting to tell stories that people want to hear. And I've been so lucky to work with some of the guys that have sent me their material.
I know in particular some of the stories that you have read that I have really enjoyed have come from Tom Townsend.
Todd Townsend is one of the best authors I've ever read. And for him to, and for a fan writer, someone who doesn't require praise or monetization for his stuff,
Right.
He just wants to share his material with the world. I think Todd is amazing. He is so emotive with his writing that you won't get with some of the official Black Library books. He has got a deep understanding and a deep feeling towards his writing, and I've been so lucky to work with him.
Like, one thing I'm waiting for, like, my own community has been built with people that have come in, and that's the reason I have the personal works channel in my Discord. That's the reason I have the Harlequin Parlor and things like that, because a question that's been asked on my Discord is, why don't I paint anymore? And that ties into why I created this channel in the first place. And the reason I created this channel in the first place was because, so my right hand, even now, just manipulating the mouse, just doing the little things I have been doing, the fingers on my pinky and my index finger right here have gone numb. If I continue to try to use my hand, eventually what's going to happen, like if I went in and I tried to, the last time it really happened, I was trying to clean off something for my father-in-law. And what wound up happening was I was cleaning, I ignored how numb my fingers were getting, and then all of a sudden my entire hand cramped to the point where it put me on my knees. And I couldn't get up because it felt like my hand had cramped up so badly, it felt like the muscles in my hand were going to break my fingers. Fine motor control is something that I can't do anymore. I can't do it extensively, because if I try, it just creates a massive problem. Eventually, I can't use the hand anymore, and that's why I can't paint. Vox, you stepping away for a second? Yeah, he's stepping away for a second. But that's why I can't paint anymore. And that's also why I started up the YouTube channel, because I finally started to get back into 40K after about 6-7 years of being out of it. And I was like, okay, I can't paint, I can't game. What can I do? And then I did what I saw so many other people doing that I was watching at the time, and decided, why not? I'll make a YouTube channel. And I literally sat there for 3 weeks before I recorded my first episode of If the Emperor Had a Text-to-Speech Device. And I would come home from work every day and look at the screen and just be like, why don't I do this? And then I found the most demonically corrupted camera I've ever had, and I recorded the first video on this microphone here, which this headset's an old Xbox headset. So that's what that is. That's how all this started. It's ridiculous. Let's see. What are some other questions? Daddy's Rod asks, you want to smash? No, I don't. The Inquisitorial representative said, if you had to leave one alive between Lorgar and the Tau, which would you choose? I choose Lorgar because the Tau would die anyway. Enclave operator, what got me into 40K specifically? My best friend Jason, when I was a kid, he introduced me to Hell's Reach. I read Hell's Reach, and I've been into it ever since. Indigo. I'm saving that one. Iron Kiko says, hey, boss, my question is, do you watch Gundams? I do not watch Gundam. I don't have time. Let's see. Daddy Vio asks, what's best in life, old man? I can tell you guys flat out. I have been in positions where I have made 6 figures a year. I have been in positions where, I've had all sorts of things going on. I've lived all over the country. I've been to a whole bunch of different countries. I've traveled. I've done all this stuff. The best thing in life, and the thing that I tell people that I've always shot for, is to be absolutely content. And not happy, because happiness fades. But to be content is what I've always aimed for. I want to do something. I want to, eventually, my hope for this channel, eventually, is to not only consistently put out my own content, but to also have this channel be something where, you know, I'm introduced to new topics, I get to work on my own content. You guys, if you guys haven't seen my stuff, you know, I love doing 5-ish minute lore. I love doing my lore videos. I'm consistently working on more. I want to get into doing more audio dramas. Now I have this microphone, that my sound quality is going to get better. I'm going to be a lot happier doing it. But no one, whenever I talk to somebody about what I want out of life, I just want to be content, and that's it.
I have to say, Hobbit, you are right. To
Yes.
crush your enemies, to see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentations of the women. Yeah, come on,
Yes.
come on. We have to crush them all.
Be an orc, get to the chopper.
Come on, get to the chopper. Come on.
Ronnie asks, now this is specific. I don't, Vox, I don't know if you've heard of a writer called the Vox and the, I'm an idiot. God, I'm a boomer.
I have heard of him.
I wonder where. Have you ever heard of A Fan with Too Much Time?
Fan with too much time.
Right.
I have heard that name.
A Fan with Too Much Time is doing a series called Star Wars vs. 40K, and it is excellent. And I could only imagine if you voiced that, but seriously, Ronnie asks about something in there. If Anakin did become the new Ever-Chosen and was sent into the 40K universe, what effect do you think it would have? Also, clue if you're dealing with the Alpha Legion too much. And he says, I quote, "I wonder if the guy on the Golden Throne is Alfarius." If Anakin did become the new Ever-Chosen and was sent into the 40K universe, I think it would be utterly backbreaking to pretty much anyone.
Oh, you can't ask me that.
I think it would be utterly backbreaking, because if you take the two universes, put them side by side, and take everything that fan has done with the universe and meshing them, if you took the power that Anakin could have once he learns how to use it versus everything else, he would be better than Abaddon. I mean, that's just, I mean, Hobbit says if Vox did voice work for Star Wars vs. 40K, he might do something with Sineshi. X in the chat to nuke Hobbit for that thought. Anyhow, Inquisitory representative asked, "What edition did you enter 40K?" Oh my god. Yeah, that.
Oh
that.
my god. Let me have a look. Let me Google this, because it's way back. It's way back. Wait a minute.
Yeah. That was way back.
Was. You talk. I'll search.
Yeah. The first time I actually played 40K, it was in 2000 and actually played. It was with my sister. I had a Sisters of Battle Army, and I think I played in 2000. My first game in 2003. But I had been in it since the early 2000s.
Oh my gosh! All right, now you said you're a boomer. You say you're a boomer. Well, I raise your boomer.
Oh.
Because I first got into Warhammer. I've never played it, by the way. I've always wanted to. Never had enough friends or clubs around me to want to play it. But I got into Warhammer. Excuse me. Out 1989, 1990.
Yes. Yeah, that was back when. That was back in Rogue Trader.
So yeah. And I remember my friend introducing me to Warhammer through Space Crusade.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? Are you that old to remember Space Crusade?
I remember Space Crusade, but at the same time, it's because I heard about it from other people. I didn't actively, get really heavily involved until I started playing the game. Kill Team Hungry says,
Yes,
Jesus Christ, Fox, how old are you?
Yeah. If I told you, you won't listen to me anymore. You won't listen to me anymore.
They try to.
I told you.
They just call me a boomer and move on. It's so sad. Speaking of which, birthday stream later today, guys. SCP containment breach.
Is it your birthday today?
Yeah.
Happy birthday. Why
I'm
not
older. I am our agent.
You're 1 year older.
No, don't. I'm 1 year older and wiser? Hell no. You're talking to me. I'm a moron. We get that straight here from the outset.
Oh, man. I get stupider every year. Don't worry about it. Good.
Okay, so let's see. Jobat's, this is a question specifically for me. He would like to know about the lights. He has a really nice display cabinet for his miniatures, but he's currently looking into lighting solutions for the inside of it with all the flashy colors and dim gubbins and all that. Jobat's, my thing is, I have a studio light set up over there, and that's made by Venvitar. Now, it's a Venvitar studio light. It's tied to an app on my cell phone, so I can do everything I want and change the colors. But if you're talking about a cabinet, if you're wanting to do something for a cabinet, there are LED light strips that run off of light power supplies, like small battery, AAA, stuff like that. That will also Bluetooth connect to apps on your phone, so you can change the lighting, increase the intensity, decrease the intensity, things like that. Highly recommend it because I'm going to be doing the same. I plan on getting artwork in the next couple of months. I'm going to be getting a new artwork piece every single time stuff comes over, and I'm going to be working with that as far as putting lights around it, things like that. I bought the studio light because I wanted good lighting and I wanted mood lighting. It really has been effective. If this was nighttime over here like it is for Vox right now, I would definitely have the purple lighting up right now for Slaneshi Horror Series. Let's see.
I would love to have lighting like that.
Yeah. Well, this light, actually, the light that I got, that I have, it was actually, I have to thank my Patreons for that because my Patreon has allowed me to do a lot of things, and one of them is studio lighting. The next is the microphone, and of course the super chats that I've received and everything else that YouTube has, the community has done. My community has done a lot for me in terms of, getting me to where I want to be. And I can't thank you guys enough for that, honestly. Hive might ask, where are you from?
From the UK. England. Southwest of England. A place called Somerset, which I think shares a namesake with America. I think there's a Somerset in America.
There's a lot of Somersets in America, actually. There is a lot.
Oh, really?
Burb asks, have you been chatting about Star Wars vs. 40K yet? Not that much, Burb. Not that much. I have said that he needs to. I highly recommend it. As far as oh god, the story is awesome. There is a lot of fan service, but at the same time, it's awesome fan services.
I mean, I love Star Wars. I love Warhammer. So why wouldn't I love that?
Iron Kiko asks, boss, do you recognize the Kiko in the water? No, I do not recognize the Kiko in the water. And he also asks, boss, if you were in an SCP Foundation Mobile Task Force, what mobile task force would you be in? The one that was nowhere near any of the Foundation sites and sat at home playing League of Legends all day. That would be the mobile task force I'd be assigned to. Looking for SCPs in League of Legends. That's where I'd be. I wouldn't be around like 682, no 47, no 97, no 319, no 90210. Fuck all of that. I'm staying the fuck home if I'm in a mobile task force. I'm just not doing it. You know what SCP is, right, Vox?
I do. I've actually done one SCP narration, but
really?
No one liked it. Yeah, I've done one.
Well, you're gonna have to send that one to me because I need to check that out.
I loved it. I loved making it. But no one really grasped onto it. No one really wanted to listen to it. It's a real shame.
Oh. Okay, so we're gonna
I'll send you to it.
Definitely. Okay, guys. Thank you, Hobbit. Hobbit says, I believe fans writing a Star Wars vs. 40K is better than Disney or GW have put out for a while. And this is actually quite true. I have enjoyed that series so much. It has been incredible. Tyler Holes asked, and while I'm getting the last episode up, he asked, hey, Vox in the Void, what's your opinion on the Tau?
I like them. You hate them, but I like them.
Yes, Inquisitor.
I love the anime aesthetics.
Yes, Inquisitor. Over there. All right. I'm gonna purge you later. Anyhow,
No,
all the gods
come
are
on.
dead. Act 3.
No.
Yes.
If you promised. If you promised, my boy.
All right. So, all the gods are dead. Act 3.
Hope you
Here
enjoy.
we go.
The hard round splintered alongside 1,000 others on the wall of the capital city defenses. The insect taskmaster made jerking, threatening motions, hissing and cracking his lash, spurring Solomon to fire again. He sent a burst of fire from his autogun that traced across the thundering night in a wide, untrained grouping. A well-muscled soldier opened up with a heavy stubber to Solomon's left, ripping bullets into rockcrete barricades that sent a light show of crimson ricochets sparking into the sky. The city's defenses called back in furious anger. Huge search beams swept the area like the eyes of giant gods, lighting the path for the haphazard collection of improvised weapon platforms to rain death from their high position. Solomon was close enough to spot Imperial engineers and militiamen running the length of the wall, hunched from the weight of the stacks of munitions they constantly delivered to the guns. They occasionally dropped like targets at a carnival range when snipers of the arch enemy sent overcharged bolts whistling through them. The muscled heavy gunner turned with a sneer to Solomon and the wretched squad of injured troops that surrounded him and roared for them to advance, finishing his thickly accented order with a burst of fire dangerously close to their feet. With a crippled cheer, the squad stood as tall as their broken bodies could muster, threw out a dark prayer to their god from their cracked, bloody lips, and charged. An aging farmer of root vegetables that had lived his entire life in the mundane safety of Arvum now raced and rolled from barricade to barricade, las and explosive rounds missing him by mere inches. A week ago, this would have stunned him in fear, frozen his advance to be cut down by the incoming fire. But this feeling had subsided. Any thoughts of his past happy life had faded into blurred dreams, eaten away by unrelenting visions of horror and survival. Survival. He would survive. A rushing soldier to his flank lost the upper half of his head as a bolt screamed into him, spraying Solomon's iron mask with gore. The view of the battlefield turned oily purple as thick, dripping matter covered his vision. Solomon hurriedly fingered out the eye slits, scooping and flicking handfuls of skull and sticking brains to the ground, wiping his hands clean on his flak armor and a nearby Aquila graffitied barrier. He exhaled a mantra of rapid breaths, tapped his weapons magazine a designated number of times for superstitious fortune, and readied to move onwards. Find the paths and live, he promised himself before he moved on his haunches, away from the cover of the rockcrete barricade and sidling in behind the fresh wave of troopers that sprinted towards the main gate to the city. Quad-mounted machine guns swiveled as they fired from the wall, kicking up huge chunks of the earth around Solomon and the charging warriors. The road leading to the city's giant gate was wide and perilously open. Burning vehicles from both armies lit their charge like beacons. The sprawling bodies of incinerated crewmen and drivers crunching to carcinogenic dust under the heavy zigzagging boots of the assault. Traitor engineers at the front of the advance hastily assembled improvised explosives, passing them to manic infantry that hurled them towards the reinforced gate. Most of the crazed soldiers were cut down before they got to throw the bombs, their bodies disintegrating when the timers expired. Crude, percussive detonations flashed and popped, leaving an impressive plume of black smoke, but barely denting the heavy gate to the city. The defenders on the wall boldly made the sign of the Aquila as they mocked and cursed at their attackers with obscene hand gestures. From the concealment of apertures in the wall, Imperial sharpshooters thinned the engineers' ranks with expert shots to the satchel charges before more had a chance to be primed.
Nice.
The colossal searchlights combed the area again, illuminating an entire platoon of Adavan infantry that slowly crept through a wheat field to the east of the wall. They were instantly pinned by ferocious defense fire before vaporizing in well-coordinated mortar strikes. The stones began to jump around Solomon's feet. His bones shook, and his teeth chattered to the squealing treads of armored vehicles approaching through the rainstorm, their rattling engines bellowing above the crash of thunder. Each vehicle's own mounted lumen cast an image of a monster's gaze in Solomon's mind, a vision of a creature's cyclopean white eye that pierced the darkness. The metal beasts that pushed through the heavy rain were not birthed from the mythological tales of antiquity, but the forged worlds of the Imperium, looted and repurposed by the arch-enemy.
Refurbished.
Riding on the hulls of the 3 golden-painted tanks were more of the androgynous demons from the Forest March, their wicked claws gripping onto the metal and bone scaffolding that caged the vehicles. They hadn't finished advancing before each tank opened up with their main cannon, focusing all of their immense firepower on the huge gates. A barrage of snaking missiles responded in kind from the wall, bombarding the tank line and shredding one of the vehicle's treads in a flaming shower of metal plates and side skirting. The tanks continued their punishments of the gates with rapid fire, whilst the demonettes dismounted, craving the anticipated taste of combat. Solomon watched the giant gates begin to buckle, great cracks appearing on the reinforced metal as more explosive-tipped shells pounded the target. The demonettes screeched as the thick battle cannon smoke cleared, and a hole had appeared in the gate. They launched themselves forward at blistering speeds to be the first to reach access to the city. They funneled into the breach in the gate, and Solomon heard frantic exchanges of weapon fire before it gave way to a chorus of human, murderous death cries from beyond. The full force of the Scourge of Adavan pressed forward now, eager to turn the capital city into a wasteland of pleasure and unforgiving pain. Pink, flak-armored troops scrambled over one another like excited addicts to gain access to the capital, wildly firing their lasguns through the cracked hole in the gate to the tune of the citywide alarms and terrifying thunderclaps above. The heretic invaders must have taken control of the gatehouse, as a deafening grind of gears signaled the locks disengaging and the door start to rise. Solomon rose to his feet as the gate reached its summit and felt something building within him. An urge to cry out, not in pain or for his fallen world, but for bloody victory. He had survived the sacking of his village. He had survived 7 soul-flaying days and nights hidden in the ranks of the arch-enemy. He had survived a full frontal assault on a heavily defended bastion of the Imperium. He felt good, powerful, a warrior. With 2 hands, he held his auto rifle above his head and screamed until his throat bled. The cobblestone streets of the capital were full of the debauchery Solomon had come to expect after such an assault. The wine flowed as freely as the bloodletting on every corner, and he knew it was dangerous to even be near the acts of depravity he suddenly found impossible to look away from. He had frequently wondered how the host even maintained a fighting presence with the frequency with which they killed their own. There were sacrifices, relentless infighting, self-murder, and the constant pursuit of pleasure through nefarious, life-shortening ways.
Lovely.
There was beast baiting, gladiatorial fights, scarification, branding, and amputations of digits, limbs, and genitals. This is what they did to celebrate. To congratulate each other for another world fallen.
Congratulations, let's throw the Pain Olympics in the middle of the field. Lovely. Do not Google the Pain Olympics.
Solomon stared with a worrying nonchalance as the city's town crier was pulled from his domicile and into the street by a gang of young initiates who kicked and wrestled the man to the ground. The Adavan youths took turns to spit in his mouth before they gouged out his larynx with a dull, peeling blade.
Why? Ugh.
Solomon did not even wince as the crier's vocal cords tore and his low, burbling screams became high, pig-like squeals. Great field kitchens had been erected in the market district of the city, roasting trunks of meat turned on giant spits, the skin
disgusting.
crackling and oozing rich, sticky juices onto the sizzling coals below. With his stomach empty, Solomon cautiously approached the eatery, and a handful of carved meat was thrust into his palm. It smelled divine, of exotic spices that Solomon had only dreamt about tasting in his lifetime. He hurried like a scavenging rat into an unlit alley, loosened and lifted the iron mask away from his mouth, and began to devour the meat with a crazed grin. He licked the lining of warm grease from his thin lips before closing his eyes, savoring each succulent bite and swallow of the tender, fatty meal. All that mattered was filling his starving belly, especially when the food tasted this damned good.
You're eating Chad from accounting. I just want you to know that. I want you to know that, you prick. Like, you're eating Chad. He worked down in accounting. He had a Shih Tzu, and he had a nice girlfriend, and now you're eating his bicep because you're a prick.
Solomon didn't even notice the pair of heretic cooks carrying the limp body of an overweight Imperial citizen past the alleyway entrance and heaving the corpse onto a field kitchen table.
No, Tyler,
The body was stripped, beheaded, quartered, stuffed with spiced vegetables, and rammed onto another spit pole. Solomon emerged fat and happy from the narrow alleyway, tonguing the remaining meat from the many gaps in his teeth. He continued to traverse the winding streets of the ravaged city, thinking nothing of taking a long woolen greatcoat from the smashed window of a tailor and sweeping it around his storm-soaked frame. He reached through the shattered doorway of the next broken storeface and picked a large bottle of hard liquor, paying with an imaginary coin that he flipped to the elderly owners of the shop that lay motionless in each other's arms, dried bullet holes through their heads, and a handgun by the old gentleman's side. The bodies had been left to rot by the arch-enemy. No fun if they're not screaming, concluded Solomon as he unscrewed the bottle cap and took a swig of the fermented fruit alcohol through the mouth slit of the mask. It warmed his throat when it didn't spill down the iron facing. He'd missed being able to drink and be merry since government taxations had risen to astronomical heights. Frag your taxes. Worth nothing but shit now, Solomon mused as he took another hefty drink of the soothing brandy. The strong alcohol had started to take effect, a warming glow rising from his stomach that numbed his hands.
Oh, we're about
face,
to take a nose
and
dive
mind.
into the bad part of the pool.
He had to suppress a drunken giggle when he stopped to watch an Adavan trooper desperately attempt to fornicate with a statue of the city's pompous governor, rutting himself bloody on the granite legs of the enormous effigy. He lifted the amasek and took another mouthful, immediately spitting it out with an uncontainable laugh. It all seemed ridiculous, like some elaborate joke. The copulating man looked over and gestured with his head for Solomon to join in, flicking out his dry, milky tongue in quick, disgusting motions.
What?
Solomon doubled over, his laugh now turning into a mirth-filled howl. The thrusting soldier started to laugh too. They laughed together until
It's like, bro, you're trying to fuck granite. It's not gonna go the way you want. I'm just saying. Oh, God. Slaneshi people. Why?
the soldier finished consummating with his stone lover and moved on to the next statue of the governor's prized horse.
What the fuck
The
is
world
wrong
was
with that
spinning
guy?
now in vomit-inducing angles and colors. The smell of death in the air and strong alcohol on his breath. The sounds of monsters and the wails of civilian agony echoing through the streets. The ground seemed to tilt suddenly through his intoxicated eyes, like a rocking boat heaving on unsteady waters. Failing to right himself, he tumbled over a slack cobblestone and landed hard on the wet thoroughfare, shattering some of the bones in his fingers, as well as his prized bottle that littered the road in thick shards of glass. He pulled his knees to his chest and wept like a baby who had broken his favorite toy, mourning the fermented anesthesia that washed away in the rain. Solomon's damp eyes began to lag behind the cherubic mask, and he allowed himself to forget the madness, the darkness of sleep closing in around him. A sweet, smelling smoke enveloped Solomon as he returned to the temple of flesh within his dreams. Along the walls of the great pulsating main chamber were bronzed ornate doors, their sizes varying from dwarven to giant. They opened in turn as he passed, allowing him brief diverging scenes of pleasure and endless greed. In one crowded side chamber, hairless, identical women lounged on a bed of living meat, pleading for Solomon to join them, their supple, Nubian skin being branded in the vile, searing symbols of chaos by a hooded tormentor. In the corner of the chamber, a corpse of one of the sisters was strung up by her veins, the long threads of arterial tubes wrapping around a plinth of marbled stone.
Why?
Red, circular eyes like polished rubies fixed on Solomon from inside the executioner hood as he teetered at the doorway. A perverted, voyeuristic compulsion to step inside, arguing with his rational thoughts. The hooded figure angrily yammered in a deep foreign tongue before unseen hands slammed the door shut and it molded into the wall of flesh. From the neighboring doorway, a golden flowing stream of coins and precious jewels ran into the main chamber. He reached down and inspected a handful of the gold pieces, palming through each shining treasure. Confusion spread across Solomon's features, as in the light of the fire pits he found all of the coins were embossed with his own disheveled face on one side, and on the other, Adamina. The beautiful face of the woman he had helped nurse through years of pain and labors, the companion he had loved deeply since their time growing up on the farm as children, the kind and selfless Adamina who had honored and shared the sacred vows of marriage for 30 wonderful years. The bawling, helpless invalid he left to die as he cowered under rotten floorboards. Nearly forgotten in a week.
Good Lord.
If it hadn't been for the coins that fell through Solomon's open fingers, he was sure he would have forgotten his wife forever. Then he heard her. The voice was soft and quiet, barely audible over the crackling torches, muffled lustful moans, and cast iron fire pits. But it was there, calling out to him from beyond the single wooden door in the lavish row of gateways that lined the breathing walls. He approached the unremarkable door and pressed an ear against the bare wood. Her voice called to him again with a muted whimper. Something clicked, and the door opened with a backdraft of blinding smoke. Solomon stepped within. A swirling mist danced in front of his steps, guiding him through a corridor of mirrors that distorted his reflection whenever he dared to look. In one tall-looking glass, his body appeared crippled and lame, his face hanging loose on one side, threatening to fall from his skull. In the next mirror, wide and devastated white wings fluttered behind him, cancerous bleeding feathers molting from his back. In some of the reflected images, other fantastical creatures and leering figures walked alongside Solomon, acting as guides, temptresses, or curious spectators. The tripping smoke that pulled at him and masked the way forward now began to wisp away on the current of an invisible wind, revealing the end of the narrowing corridor and a polished mirror that spanned the height of the room. A disembodied push from behind thrust Solomon against the glass pane and held his head towards the materializing images that played out in the dream beyond the glass.
What? No.
It was their home on the farm during the night of the first attack. A statuesque crowd of armored soldiers stood gathered in the candlelight, their motionless backs to Solomon. He attempted to see what was beyond the gathering, standing on the tips of his toes and calling out furiously for the invaders to move.
Oh, really?
Adamina's voice crowed once more, this time clear and painfully close. The unseen hold on Solomon's head pushed him further against the glass. It felt like his body was drowning in warm sink mud as he was forced from one reality into another. He now stood in the living quarters of his home, behind the gathering of soldiers who refused to respond to Solomon's arrival. He took a deep inhale of breath and could smell the familiar farmyard aromas entering the hab through the splintered door. With their backs still to him, the marauders parted in disturbing synchronization, stepping outwards to the sides of the room in 3 regimented lines. They came to a uniform stop, frozen in a formation that gave them the unnatural appearance of market mannequins in preparation for transit. The faceless, smooth heads on top of the soldiers' bodies more than helped with this illusion. His Adamina sat on the floor by the fireplace. Her face and body looked young and full. Dark hair brushed against her neck in the side plait he always favored when they first courted. Solomon approached and slowly knelt to sit on his heels in front of his wife. She would not look or respond to him, however much he called her name or begged for forgiveness. She just stared with soulless apathy, through his gaze and into the void. He beat the ground until his knuckles split. He wrapped a hand around her face and tried to force her to talk, shaking her head with a new violence bubbling inside him. A clamorous sound took his attention, as a familiar bill-hooked machete clattered to the ground by his side. The mannequin soldiers hadn't moved as he looked back and scoured the room, their perfect line still unbroken. Before he could turn his head back to Adamina, she was upon him. With a demonic ferocity, she scratched and bit at Solomon's exposed skin, sinking needled teeth into his screaming face. In panic, he gripped onto her head to prevent her pulling back and tearing his cheek away. Midnight black eyes vibrated and bulged inside their sockets as her young, unblemished skin became translucent and withered in metamorphic transformation. They wrestled around the living quarters of the farmstead, crashing into the mannequin troopers who fell like rigid pins from the impact. He thrust a punch upwards into her throat, and the demon released her locked jaws from his face. Solomon rammed his forehead into her nose, smashing the cartilage to powder. She winced and recoiled in shock, giving him the second he needed to scramble for the blade and cleave it deep into her collarbone. Bright crimson blood fountained from the cut as the demon fell, the body going into grand mal seizure in a frothing, pathetic heap. The horrific features of the black-eyed creature dissolved, and once more his wife lay crippled and bleeding, mouthing silent words of betrayal, confusion, and prayer as she stared at him in terror. The mannequins surrounded the panting Solomon, and he watched with dead eyes as they tore her apart.
I want this guy to die badly.
He woke to the sound and acrid smell of the initiate gang urinating on him. One of the youngest members, a child no more than 12, was trying to cut through the canvas sling on Solomon's shoulder and take the autogun from his back. Another filthy-handed teen rifled through his bandolier and greatcoat pockets. The leader announced to the group he wanted the eyes, brandishing the short blade still sticky from the crier's murder. They hadn't realized he was awake when they attempted to take off the iron mask. In a sobering haze, he pulled up his weapon, and with a deafening burst, the gang dropped dead. A short applause rippled from a squad of Adavan infantry nearby before they turned back to their conversation and the murder was forgotten. He charged another magazine into the smoking rifle and warily stood, the dizzying effects of the amasec still present in his blood. In the overcast grey clouds of dawn, the invaders held a celebratory parade in the main square of the capital. The vibrant, garish colours of the soldiers' uniforms and the stalking monsters lent the once dull palette of the architectural stonework a sense of pageantry and life. It was unhinged at all times. Their maniacal whims and strategy would never be organised into a true fighting force, but Solomon had to admit that they at least enjoyed their short, brutal lives. He stood quickly back onto the pavement as one of the golden tanks thundered past. The child gunner aimed the mounted heavy bolter at the crowd of cultists and infantry and mimicked the rattle of his weapon with wet farting noises from his mouth. The gathering cheered and laughed to the sight of the child howling at the sky to the melody of the tank's monstrous war horn. Drunk on alcohol, pleasure and victory, the audience spilled from the pavements and side streets, following behind the treads of the behemoth, their sudden surge of movement forcing Solomon along in a claustrophobic wave of stinking heretics. He couldn't find his breath as bodies crashed and squeezed.
I love how you keep on saying that he like, from his perspective, they're still heretics, like he isn't one at this point.
Against him. The smell was nauseating within the crush, like an overflowing latrine doused in week-old sweat and
That's
left to cook in the sweltering heat of a summer's sun. Solomon was thrust forward, his hands grasping onto any extremities to stop from falling and being trampled to death. There were brief lulls in the movement, and he took these chances to try and escape. With his arms up to his chest, he pushed through slim pockets in the mob, taking a couple of quick steps before another wave surge hit, sending him spinning in a new direction. Solomon had battled to the periphery by the time the crowd had converged at the steps of a vast imperial cathedral. Upon the corners of the ancient building perched a pair of mighty statues, their stone raptorial talons hooked over palatial columns, colossal wings splayed high and wide as if about to take flight. Solomon watched a tank rotate its turret and send a well-placed anti-armor shell that impacted on one of the stonework eagles, taking one of its heads off in a burst of dust and debris. Giant chunks of falling stone tumbled down the cathedral steps. An unlucky group of soldiers flattened to paste under its rolling path. He felt a rising warmth when the red sun of Arvum cut through the cloud cover and lit the cathedral like theater lanterns. As if planned by the dark gods themselves, the focus point of the star's light shone across the arched entrance of the building, drawing the entire crowd's attention. It may have been the brandy in his veins, or something darker, but Solomon felt drawn to the spectacle.
No.
He clambered to the front of the audience, fighting off unrelenting, fondling touches that expended the remainder of his lilting energy. Anticipation rose to fevered heights when a mighty fanfare of horns and vox-amplified ululation welcomed the main protagonist to the stage of despair. The scourge of Adavan cried out as one, weeping in sheer admiration for the warp-spawned greater demon that crawled from the archway. Its steps were stalked by a procession of beast-riding maidens that pulled at their bipedal mounts, fanning out across the length of the wide steps. The four-armed demon uncoiled to its full height and looked upon its army, relishing the pain they had wrought on this mortal world. It unfurled its scything arms and rumbled a call that drowned out all other sounds. There was something else that shared the stage with the devil. A small naked figure, almost invisible in the titanic shadow of the demon's legs, came forward.
It keeps getting worse.
A woman. Solomon vomited inside his mask. Adamina. It was truly her, not the hell-born apparition that plagued his dreams each time he slumbered. His wife began to run her fingers over the scaled leg of the demon to the hissing dismay of the mounted maidens, their claws clacking in protest. Their wicked steeds shared in their distress, kicking out with avian feet and lashing at Adamina with vicious spiked tails. The Keeper of Secrets paid no attention to the descent of its heralds, and nor did Adamina while she continued to caress and kiss its glistening skin. Solomon felt the emptiness of a lover's betrayal, squirming as he watched his wife find pleasure at the touch of the monster. A writhing sensation churned his gut that made him seethe with anger and jealousy. She made carnal sounds of love and lust he'd never once heard from her lips. The crowd erupted in exhilaration, and Solomon was caught in the surge again when a band of cultists battled their way to the front to worship at the feet of the demon and its new queen. A wash of engine noise above. Solomon hadn't realized the arch-enemy had flyers, trying to pinpoint the craft's approach. He wondered how they even had pilots that wouldn't dive-bomb their crafts into the earth just to feel the rush of the ground race towards them.
Yeah, who betrayed
Something
first,
loud
Hobbit?
and astoundingly fast ripped over the cathedral with a boom, a flash of blue engine flame in its wake. Then another. Two more. The fighter wing pitched upwards into the sky before turning in formation and diving towards the assembly with the burning sun at their backs.
Do it.
It was only when the tank's gunners opened up with furious ground-to-air defense did Solomon realize that this was not air fleet of the Chaos host. Heavy bolter shells tore upwards into the sky in snaking lines of glowing tracer fire, catching one of the wings of the diving craft that corkscrewed and exploded through the square in a rolling fireball. An Imperial thunderbolt leveled out and loosed a salvo of multi-laser shots and autocannon shells into the grounded army. Lines of unprepared troops and cultists toppled and came apart. One of the gilded tanks went up in a blinding mushroom cloud, the kill belonging to the air fighter that banked hard through the swirling smoke of the explosion. Solomon leapt to the ground and hauled a dying cultist on top of him as another jet screamed overhead, releasing a canister from its fuselage that broke apart, ejecting hundreds of submunitions. The flowering bomblets twisted like darts to the ground, detonating across the swarm of trapped infantry in small fragmenting blasts. Solomon roared through gritted teeth, frantically tucking his body into the back of the dying heretic, as shrapnel and steel bearings indiscriminately maimed and slaughtered all around him. 2 more lines in the crowd were chewed to mulch when a thunderbolt swooped down in an attack run, its wing-mounted guns emptying into the heaving crush of bodies.
Nice.
Adavan troopers manned the quad guns they had salvaged from the walls of the city,
Good
trying
times,
to knock
rhymes
the
with
fighter
war
craft out
crimes,
of the
guys.
sky. But the Imperial pilots were already thundering their way out of the battle to rearm and refuel. Solomon kicked off the heavy, lifeless cultist and looked to the cathedral steps. The beast-riding demonettes were gone, their steeds bolting from the chaos of the air assault. The greater demon had scaled the side of the enormous building, screaming at the aircraft that were now distant pinpricks in the sky.
Huh.
Adamina was alone. Solomon had never been a brave man, yet as he made his way up the high stone steps he felt no fear, only the desire to rescue his Adamina and break her free of the demon's spell. He removed his body armor and cast away the iron mask to show a smiling, filthy face. His eyes were bloodshot and dark, yet full of atonement
this is war
and
justice.
love. Tears that were born from shame welled and blurred his vision before falling down his emaciated cheeks. A shrill, painful screech spun Solomon around. The disgusting, oozing insect beast that had tortured and goaded him for 7 days of hell launched itself up the steps after him. It was repulsively quick as it wormed its way upwards. Its piercing battle cries turned to gurgling nonsense as a hard slug round ripped half its face off. Long, centipede legs sprawled and slipped on their own pus-yellow ichor as Solomon pumped another bullet into its
Clean in
bloated
the trash,
thorax.
guys.
The next shot sheared off the lashing arm that spun away and left a gaping, ragged hole running thick discharge onto the stonework. Solomon did not stop firing until his weapon clicked dry. Solomon swallowed hard when he realized the commotion on the steps had garnered the attention of a band of cultists that skulked their way towards him holding long blades. He fumbled a fresh charge of bullets into his auto-rifle, just in time to defend himself and Adamina. The gun bucked in full auto, the recoil too unruly for Solomon to hold steady, sending more rounds wide than on target. Before he had a chance to control the weapon, it had emptied. He reached into his leather bandolier. No more ammunition. He wildly swung the weapon like a club, cracking the jaw of a closing cultist that sent him reeling down the steps, spitting teeth. More hooded thralls swarmed, ascending the broad cathedral steps. He turned and rushed to Adamina, holding her close as the voices of the vile heretics drew closer. He needed to shield her from their blades, sacrifice himself and be free from the dreams of torment and cowardice. Solomon tensed as he prepared to feel the gutting knives dig inside his back and puncture his organs. He was not afraid. The world around him erupted in noise and phosphorescent flame. Solomon closed his eyes and accepted with a relieved laugh that this was the end, that his mortal body had been destroyed and he was being taken to stand in the Emperor's light.
Yeah, no, you're not.
But agonizing screams of death were never mentioned in the prayer texts. Solomon opened his eyes and turned to see the steps behind burning with a brilliant white fire. The flames stuck and melted the attacking cultists' flesh and bones to blubbery jelly that ran down the steps like upturned canisters of promethium. Anti-aircraft weapons and small arms belched at the fighter bomber that strafed the city's market district with more of the white flame. Solomon turned back to his beautiful wife and gently brought her face close to his. He kissed her, begging for absolution whilst another explosion of white fire sparked across the cathedral roof, the greater demon disappearing in the blast.
Fun.
He held her tight into his chest and felt a brief movement in their clutch, like the involuntary spasms of lamentation. He raised a loving hand to wipe away her tears, but recoiled when he saw she was smiling with a mouth that split her cheeks from ear to ear.
Lovely.
Her naked skin seemed to stretch and ripple as if something wanted to climb its way out, and her beautiful eyes turned black and pitted like egg sacs. The dread host of Adavan had used her broken body as a vessel for the monster that now resided inside her hollowed shell. Adamina's pain and suffering from the cancerous disease would have fed the demon fat. A full squadron of fighter bombers now approached from the east, leaving a vast, mile-wide contrail across the cloudless sky.
Ooh.
They descended and started their fire raid on the outskirts of the city. The world burned.
Yes!
Solomon grabbed onto the creature that was once his wife and wrapped his arms around her tightly before she could escape. She bit into his throat and tore his belly open. She spat corrosive gobbets of phlegm into his eyes, which melted in their sockets.
Burn it all!
He just held her tighter. In his blindness, Solomon could hear the aircraft fly past, the spiraling whistle of their bombs falling. The last thing he felt was a transient moment of unspeakable agony as they were doused in the white fire. Their flaming bodies melded together in a lover's embrace, skin falling away to reveal liquefying bones that in turn puddled at the top of the temple of flesh and stone. Together, forever, in life and death.
He finally got the Promethean bath he deserved. Oh my goodness, this was good. This was really good. Vox, you still there?
Thank you so much. I'm still here, man.
Oh, yeah. So this was excellent, guys. My thoughts on the story as a whole. This is one of the best portrayals. One thing you may have heard me say, yeah, Hobbit, except for that one time, when you left her to be brutalized by cultists. One thing I often say is I like the stories of the regular humans. I like stories about Space Marines, yes, but I really like stories about regular humans during the times of 40K and everything that goes along with it. And we don't have enough of that. We don't have enough of what this stuff actually what actually happens, what actually does. And I think things like this fill in great. This was excellent. This was the it was a happy ending. Everything burns. Yay. But this was outstanding. This was outstanding. I think Firecracker asked a question, am I asking me anything on my Discord, and I think it's so prevalent for it's a good wrap up for this entire thing. He says, "Hey old man, this is for you and Vox, but when one is creating and writing a story, what is the most important aspect that is needed to captivate the audience?" Daniel Morgan, thank you. Daniel Morgan says, "I just realized something about Hunter the Parenting. Cain is the first vampire, but is he also Cain, right? Does that mean he'd be Draken in 40K?" I have no idea, but thank you, Daniel. Firecracker's question, what do you think, Vox? Thank you, Daniel. I really do appreciate it.
Do you think I know?
Oh,
thank you, Daniel, for $10.
But Firecracker's question, hey, old man, this is for you and Vox, but when one is creating and writing a story, what's the most important aspect that is needed to captivate an audience?
I think human element of 40k. I most definitely think the human element of 40k is the most important thing to grasp when telling a story. It's amazing with Space Marines. It's amazing with the heroic actions of a Space Marine is captured right, is great, but I think it's the human element, something that we can all grasp onto. Like Solomon, everybody thinks he's a bastard. I understand that. That's why I wrote this. Do you think he's a bastard, or do you think this is how I would react in that same situation? And I think it's the human element is the most important thing to grasp onto when it comes to telling a story.
The human element is definitely, as far as for anything that I write, anything that I have worked on, because I worked on things prior to this. I've been writing for upwards of, close to 27 years at this point, just writing short stories and stuff like that. And the human element is the absolute most needed thing. And yes, we all think Solomon's a bastard, but at the same time, we all know that given the right set of circumstances, we would react similarly. And that's the thing that draws somebody into a story. That's what makes a good villain, because this guy is not a protagonist in any way, shape, or form. He is the everyman of his own story, and he's also dealing with an immense amount of trauma, and he's dealing with it in the only way that he knows how to do. And yeah, he is a bastard, and he is a coward. But at the end of the day, what he did was he died doing what he should have done to begin with. And he had to go through everything that he went through, Solomon did, to get to that point where he was ready to literally just stand there and be bombed, knowing it was coming. I mean, when it started off, he did everything he could to stay alive. And then he transitioned from that to realizing what was important to him. So, Tyler Hull says Solomon got refurbished into a Promethean puddle. This is very true.
It's very true. I'll take it.
Yeah. Villains can't be protagonists, they just can't be heroes. Yes. That's true, Dark. That's true, because we do see like in the Night Lord's Omnibus, we're cheering for horrible people. In everything 40k related, when we're dealing with the Imperium, we're cheering for horrible people 9 times out of 10. I mean, the average Space Marine would be a villain beyond compare in almost any other setting. Like genocidal, mass murdering, cultist monks, yes, they would be the villain. In any case, guys, thank you for joining us today. We're gonna go ahead and start wrapping up this live stream. This was excellent. This was very much and I think that there are some channels out that are very underrated when it comes to 40k related material. Vox and the Void being one of them. So the thing about it is, guys, like and subscribe to both Vox and myself. Push him into forums and things like that so people can hear stuff like this, because it's underrated. It's underrated, really. In any case, later today, I'm going to be back to do SCP Containment Breach for the birthday stream, and the Hospitaller is going to make my life a living misery during it, and she does that well. Also, I will bring in the Puglars at some point during that, and you guys get to hear me scream like an idiot. I'll probably be doing it when the sun goes down in here so I can do some mood lighting. Okay. Aside from all that, thank you all for joining us. Vox, do you got anything?
I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody.
And for any of you wondering about Vox's channel, anything like that, the link should be in the description down below. Vox, do you have any Patreon or anything like that you'd like to go ahead and shamelessly plug? Go ahead.
I don't have any Patreon, but I've got membership on the YouTube channel if you want to if you want to be so kind as to subscribe to the channel and to become a member, that'd be amazing. But just for you to listen to my stuff is enough. So thank you very much.
All right, guys. I would like to thank Vox for coming. Me and him have been trying to set this up for the better part of 3 weeks now, and I will see all of you next time. So whatever you guys do today, if you're not coming back later to watch me fail utterly at a video game and scream like a child at my namesake in the SCP universe coming out of the wall at me, whatever you do, just have a good day, guys, and I'll see you next time.
See ya.